You are about to journey against the current of contemporary thought and beyond the troubled waters of daily news to the very source of our extraordinary culture. You are going upstream with Cashel and Edge.
Well, Loy, good to see you today.
Hi, Jack.
Sorry I'm a little late. I was out paddleboarding.
Really?
Yeah, I fell off my board. And,
Oh, not again.
yeah, right. It's a dangerous business.
I mean, you're an expert swimmer. It's a good thing.
I am. I have a a life-saving certificate. I haven't saved any lives lately, but I can swim. And paddleboarding is, but it's a pretty dangerous sport.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, because you can conceivably, we found out, be an excellent swimmer.
Yeah.
Be paddling around in just a few feet of water.
A few feet, like how many?
Well, the area
like
in question.
20 feet of water?
No. The area in question at its deepest is 8 feet, but it's a slow descent to 8 feet. So
that's like a small apartment complex pool.
Right, the kind you could bounce off the bottom even if you couldn't swim.
Right.
But in Obama land, where this happened, in Martha's Vineyard, where his personal chef, I hate when something happens to your personal chef. I mean,
man, if that ever happened to me, they'd have to close the damn drive-through down.
Honestly, my personal chef, he knows exactly how I like my rice-a-roni.
Yes,
he can prepare that just, like a champ. No, this is unfortunate. It's kind of tragic. Guy dies, right? Personal chef to Barack Obama.
Wow.
And I don't even know his name. I hate to say it, but I should have looked that up. But that would have suggested we prepare for our shows.
Which we don't.
No, we don't do that. So we do a little bit, but just by living, not by studying.
The Obamas, I think they had a name for him. They called him Cook.
Is that what they called him?
Yeah, hey, Cook.
Yeah, right.
Get me some breakfast.
Right. I personalized, right? Mm-hmm. I only want 20 raisins per bowl of raisin bread. I want you to do that. No, they live in, the Obamas have a $12 million home on Martha's Vineyard, right on the coast. Wow. So they're obviously not overly concerned about rising sea levels. And
that'd be a risky investment, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then these things happen to, they happen to the Obamas, they happen to the Clintons. They don't happen to ordinary people. You don't hear about Warren Buffett's personal chef drowning in, a few feet of water.
It doesn't usually happen.
No. What's your take on that? Do you have any suspicions?
No, it's nothing to see here.
Yeah, keep on moving.
Keep moving along.
Right.
If another 15, 20, 30, maybe 50 close associates of the Obamas and Clintons meet at a very grisly, bizarre, untimely death, or something that is just a head scratcher, like drowning in 2 feet of water.
And placid water. It's not like there's waves or anything there. It's a pond.
If that happens, I'm going to start thinking, wait a minute. Are you telling me maybe? And then, wait a minute. That shot wasn't good for me? No.
You mean those guys who robbed Seth Rich in July
stole
of 2000?
Nothing?
Left his wallet, his cell phone, his watch, and his expensive jewelry because they botched the robbery at 3 a.m. and they beat him up, and then they felt the urge to shoot him as well. And the thing is, we have to believe that we're supposed to believe this. We're not.
When those robbers got home and said, "Wow, that was great," they go, "Oh shit, I forgot
to take the wallet." It's like the guys in Home Alone, that level of robbery. And that gets us back to the life Barack Obama has led, which is free of inquiry by the media. And I don't know if you noticed this phenomenon.
No, he was scandal-free.
Scandal-free.
Yeah.
They all use that phrase for 8 years because they didn't look for it. He was scandal-free because a scandal only becomes a scandal when the New York Times calls it a scandal.
That's right.
On the front page. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just an incident or event, like like an event like Fast and Furious or the IRS Tea Party scandal, just events. Nothing to see here. Keep moving. Or let alone the whole thing of Russiagate, which, evolved under his direct tutelage, his direct eye.
They're still using that.
Yeah.
They are betting so much on the ignorance of the American public that I still hear one of them using that Russian.
Yeah, right. They do.
Still, like
right.
It's holding on to what little shreds of, leverage that gives them.
Right. Yeah. No, it's crazy. And yet into this paradise wanders, just in the last few weeks, this guy named David Garrow.
Uh-huh.
Do you know much about Garrow?
No.
He's a civil rights historian, Pulitzer Prize winner. He's Martin Luther King's most prominent biographer, and he wrote a biography of Barack Obama, and it came out in 2017 called Rising Star. And Garrow's interesting because he's a progressive who believes that Obama's presidency was a complete failure and is willing to say so out loud.
What brand of progressive is he?
He is
the writer. Is he a classical liberal or a New Deal Democrat type guy?
That's a good question because I've read enough about him or by him to. He seems to me the kind of progressive who's just angry at other people doing things that he doesn't like. I mean, maybe that's a simplification.
So he may not politically be a real guy who wants to tear things down, but
he's an establishment kind of progressive. I don't suggest I don't see any kind of coherent philosophy coming out of him.
Okay,
but he writes his book. He interviews 1,000 people. And if you're David Garrow, you're a Pulitzer Prize winner, you could pick up the phone, and people will answer your phone call, and you can talk to them. There's been numerous biographies written before his, including a couple others by Pulitzer Prize winners like David Marinus, David Remnick. But he was the first one to talk to Obama's girlfriends.
Obama's what?
Are you thinking Obama didn't have girlfriends? Well, apparently he had 3 girlfriends.
Really?
Yes. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. I thought that he was making them up entirely, right?
Oh, you mean when
he
had that compendium of, or that
composite
girlfriend?
Right.
Yeah, well, it kind of looked that way.
It did.
It kind of sounded like a 12-year-old guy making up what his girlfriend was like.
Looked like, right, yeah. But Garrow did his homework. So it's hard to believe that these other Pulitzer Prize winning biographers, and Garrow says it himself, he's flabbergasted by what he calls the lack of curiosity, even by the biographers, about Barack Obama's life. They don't talk to his girlfriend. They weren't that hard to find, There were 3 of them. 2 of them, one was Australian and white. One was white Californian. Another one was a half white, half Indonesian or Chinese or something. Like I say, they don't know the difference among themselves. And she was the most interesting because he lived with her for a couple of years, and then he left her because his political ambitions were such that he knew he needed a black African American wife to ground himself in the black community. Otherwise, he would have no future, really. I mean, he was thinking that sort of pragmatically early on. Because his real interest, says David Garrow, wasn't in girls. Mm-hmm. And so what Garrow does is he finds a letter that he wrote to his ex-girlfriend, Alex McNear, and when the hardcover of the book comes out in 2017, there's no allusion to this, of what he said. McNear, purposefully redacted that portion of the letter, so Garrow could not see it. But he's a good reporter. He's a serious reporter. So when he finds out that she sold the letters to Emory University, he goes to Emory, or has a colleague go to Emory and get a hold of the actual letters, and he finds out what's been redacted. And what Obama was saying as a young 20-something to his ex-girlfriend or semi-current girlfriend was, you know, I make love to men in my mind daily, right? And I hope to expand my horizons in this regard. This is a 20-something-year-old. You did that when you were in your 20s, didn't you? Send letters to your girlfriends telling you how you really wish you were gay.
I'll tell you what, there is no doubt, zero doubt, that if you express those kinds of feelings
right.
to a woman that you have some kind of interest in, you're gay.
That's your way of saying sayonara.
Well, my point is just the fact that you would even want to bring that up in any circumstances
right.
at all says you're gay. Yeah.
Unprompted. Yeah. I mean, who has
You're
those thoughts, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the last thing I would imagine even people who are questioning their sexual identity.
Right. The cues.
Legitimately, the cues
in the LGBTQ
would probably not be tossing it out like that.
No.
They'd probably be in their quieter moments being more introspective about what makes them tick,
right,
than to just throw it out there and go, "Hey, doll, you're kind of a cute chick, but I'm going to tell you what. Here's what's really going on with
in
me."
my mind, you know, that reminds me of a story. I mean, this is, and I'm just getting the pure gossip here, but and not that there's anything wrong with any of the behaviors described here. But Esther Williams, you remember Esther Williams?
Yeah.
Speaking, we're going upstream now to the culture, talking about movies.
Yeah, she was a swimmer,
yes,
movie actress.
Right, both swimmer and movie actress. And
two events in one.
Exactly right. Something new just before you have your ice cream and cupcakes. She was very popular in the late 40s, early 50s.
Yes, she was.
Because they could make these big cinemascope color extravaganzas, and they were competing with TV at that time. The movies, Hollywood wanted to make big color movies, and she was the person. And she was engaged to Jeff Chandler. Remember this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Big hunking guy of the Rock Hudson School of Hunkiness, apparently. So they're engaged, and it looked like a marriage made in heaven. You know, Jeff's odd. He's a Jewish guy out of Brooklyn, but that's not the role he played. He was always playing big macho guys or Indians. He played like Cochise in one movie. And so before their wedding, he says, "There's something I have to show you." And he's very proud, very excited, right? And she's waiting and thinking, "Oh, I wonder what this is going to be. This is going to be great," right? And then he comes out in total drag, right?
Mm.
And she says, she's flabbergasted. And then he says, "Let me show you my closet." He has a secret closet, and it's filled with dresses, right? It's not like a one-off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she says to him, "What do you think about when we make love?" You know? And then he gives the kind of a Barack Obama answer. He goes, "Well, I make believe you're a man."
Oh, my God.
Every woman wants to hear that.
Swept her right off her feet, I'll bet.
Just like Cochise taking a war bride, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, and that was the end of that. So she doesn't end up marrying Jeff Chandler. But when you make that kind of reveal to your girlfriend,
Neptune's daughter, no less.
yeah, exactly. That's right. It was one of her movies, wasn't it? Yeah,
A great one.
yeah.
Berkeley could do those gigantic musical numbers
Right.
in the water a lot easier and cheaper than they could on the stage.
Yes, that's right.
I'm just
Yeah,
guessing.
I was gonna say, well, they do have
I'm saying there was kind of a brilliant side benefit to that Esther Williams stuff, which is they can all be in the water having their legs going like it's cheap.
And you're right. They would Berkeley. What was his first name? Oh, Berkeley.
Busby.
Berkeley Busby.
Busby Berkeley.
Busby Berkeley. Yeah. As they would do the overhead shots, where you could see their, what kind of configurations they were making with
Yeah.
their various bodies. No, and that was we haven't seen many of those spectacles lately, but
No, they don't do those anymore. A brilliant one that I saw, Keen and Peele did a short one. Do you know who they are?
Sure, yeah, they're very funny.
They had my buddy Nick Searcy in one a few years ago.
Yeah,
And it just floored me. It was a complete musical production with everybody doing the whole deal. And Nick played a cop, and he took one of them, Key or Peele, I don't know which one, the stockier guy.
right.
He was throwing him in the hoosegow, and he got knocked out and went to this place called Negro Land. and it was just, I'm telling you, if you get a chance, you want to see something. It's a little rough,
Right.
but man, is it funny. And it's got the full production, the musical production.
That sounds great. Because those guys get away with stuff that
Go to
you and I
Key and
couldn't get
Peele
away- yeah,
and
right.
Searcy, Searcy. Just Google that, and that'll pop up, but it's worth watching.
Right,
You'll laugh.
They have that kind of immunity that comes from making fun of your own.
That's right. It's a Chappelle thing.
Right.
Chappelle.
Right. But
Richard Pryor did it.
oh, sure.
He was an
yeah,
early one.
Yeah. But Barack Obama, like the elves we talked about last week, has no known sense of humor.
No.
And so to make fun of him or to even challenge him became essentially an act of overt racism.
Oh, absolutely. If you pointed out his mom pants when he was throwing like a girl,
Yeah.
doing that pretending like he was American with
That
the
opening
baseball
pitch,
thing.
yeah, that was embarrassing.
Well, that's what happens
Right.
when, they could have lined up 5 guys, said, all right, we understand one of you guys is a Manchurian spy.
Right.
We're going to find out who it is.
Right.
We're going to find out who it is by having you throw an American baseball.
Right.
Now get out there and throw it, and we're going to see which one of you is a commie.
That would do it. That's much better than who's Babe Ruth or how many home runs did Babe Ruth hit in
right.
1927.
I say just that is enough to do it.
When I saw him throw, I said, "Yeah, I didn't even
Commie.
I didn't need to see the love letters. Not just commie, but dubious sexuality." I was just watching a TV show, and I'll tell you what the show is Peaky Blinders, which is on Netflix, kind of a grim crime 1920s kind of thing. But they were throwing a hand grenade, and they were throwing it like British people, I mean, Americans.
Well, the British ones had a handle on their grenade.
Yeah.
They had an actual, it was a baton.
Yeah. Those kind. Yeah, right. The ones with the little.
I think
right.
so.
Well, this was, but the throwing motion was clearly a guy. See, if you grew up in the United States as a kid, at least you used to, maybe not so now, everyone knew how to throw because you always played baseball.
Oh,
Everyone
okay.
played baseball, so you learned how to throw. Now, you might be able to throw in Britain, but you really didn't know how to throw.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
They play cricket there.
And women, and this has always been a subject of some concern and debate, whether women naturally know how to throw, and the answer is not really, but they can learn. And when they learn, they can throw well, right?
Yes.
So they have to overcome their natural...
They have to overcome the throw like a girl syndrome.
Right. And well, Obama never overcame that.
No, he didn't.
He didn't have to because as the guy, one of the guys in his conversation, David Garrow, David Samuels called him the magic Negro of the billionaire industrial complex, which is pretty cold, but they're turning against him now. Yeah. I don't quite understand this, but and why it's all coming out now. Why is Garrow out doing interviews now in 2023 when he had this information in 2017, 18? And then he says, he was on with Megyn Kelly, who I kind of like, but he said the only other person who reported on this was some obscure conservative journal, right? I said, hey, that's me. Give me some credit here, guys. Yeah, come on. It's
obscure conservative journal.
Yeah, he was referring to American Thinker, where I was writing about this openly. And then I wrote about these letters.
You know Garrow.
I've communicated with him. I don't know him, He knows who I am, though.
He could have done you a solid by mentioning your name.
Could have.
I mean, he's on a large platform. What is it, a blog? What is he doing?
And now he's doing other people's shows, like Megyn Kelly, for instance.
Okay. So that's a big platform.
Sure, totally.
Could have mentioned your name,
Could
gotten
have.
you some calls.
Thrown me a bone.
You know, it happened to me about a couple of months ago, and I'm pissed about it.
Tell me what happened.
It was a podcast where a guy that I've known for years was on there with another guy that I've known for years.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty big podcast. And I actually introduced these two guys to each other.
Right.
And so he's got this one guy on there that I introduced him to, and I'm listening to the podcast. He says, "How did we ever get together?" And the guy goes, "I don't know. I'm trying to remember. It's like, there's this friend," and I'm listening to this, and I'm like, are they kidding? He goes, "Well, we had yeah, Lloyd did it. Yeah, Lloyd.
Lloyd
and Lloyd, and then I came over there, and then they laughed, and then they went on.
Yeah.
Okay, they never mentioned my name. He just said, "Oh, Lloyd."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, would it have hurt you
Right. Why not?
on this thing with 400,000 listeners to mention your fellow actor
Right.
in this damn business?
Right.
I mean, and the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, he had to purposefully make that decision to not mention me.
Right.
Because you would have mentioned Garrow.
Sure. I mentioned him. I always give him credit.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt you.
And yet, what he does, for instance, in his book Rising Star, which is a big book, 700 pages, whatever, he exposes a lot of the lies that Obama's been telling all his life. Among them, the one that didn't get any attention that should have was this. If you recall, Obama, during the 2008 debates, was challenged about Bill Ayers by George Stephanopoulos and during a Democratic debate, because Stephanopoulos was a Hillary person, so he was going to throw this out. And that's when Obama said famously something like, "No, Bill
guy
Ayers,
in the neighborhood."
Guy in the neighborhood, right. And this is a terrorist, whether underground bomber, blah, blah, blah.
Probably the most, I would say, prolific terrorist who evaded all legal ramifications.
Yeah, for 12 years, He gets out on a technicality and says, free as a bird,
Okay.
And, they bombed the Capitol. Back when that was okay to bomb the Capitol. Yeah, there were. But so he mentions that. And then Obama sticks to the story. Some guy in the neighborhood, we met him here or there, I don't know. Well, in Rising Star, Garrow details how he and the Bernadine Dorn, who is the guerrilla hottie of the 70s, and Michelle would get together for almost nightly dinners, right up until the time he was a U.S. Senator. Massive lie. So Garrow knows that Obama and Bill Ayers are tight, and yet in his book, he refuses to acknowledge or even mention, even to discredit, my theory that Bill Ayers was the one helping Obama with Dreams from My Father. It's amazing, and I get mentioned in the footnotes, and it's odd. What happens among these people at that level? He had 3 interviews with Barack Obama. You think I'd get an interview with Barack Obama? That ain't going to happen. If I had an interview with Barack Obama, he'd say, "Hey, Jack, grab your paddleboard. We'll go out and talk out in a little pond here in front of my house." I said, "No, sorry, Barack, I ain't doing that. It's a dangerous business." So what Garrow does is, I do get mentioned in the footnotes. He's talking about a poem that Obama wrote when he was like 18 or 19 about Pop. The name of the poem is Pop. It's this old poet with whom he has a relationship that, let's just say, sounds inappropriate for an adolescent boy to be having with an older man, especially one who's a member of the Communist Party USA and is a pornographer and a would-be pedophile. I mean, at least a fictional pedophile. I don't know, probably in real life as well. And so he writes this poem. He calls it Pop. And so Garrow is writing about He said most literary critics said that the poem was about Obama's grandfather, Gramps, right? His mother's father. And he said, but hostile critics insist it's about Frank Marshall Davis. Well, and then we go to the footnote, right? And among the hostile critics, he cites two. One is a guy named Paul Kengor, who's now the editor of the American Spectator and wrote a biography of Frank Marshall Davis, university professor, expert on communism, and me. And he says, here's his quote, whose name I cite with the greatest reluctance, right? Well, thanks, Dave.
Thanks, asshole.
Yeah, thanks for that little pat on the head, Now, here's the
Dave, I want to tell you, you knew Barack Obama had that information.
Right.
And you didn't say anything about it.
Nope.
You're a coward.
You
are a coward, you a-hole.
There is that. And then I'm thinking, okay, the poem is transparently about the guy that Obama and all his buddies called Pop. If he was going to write about his grandfather, he'd call it Gramps. Right? I mean, come on. It's in your face. Now, Garrow knows I'm right. But like so many authors at that level, they refuse to acknowledge work done by people at another level. So they'll cite other people who are that seemingly other in the Pulitzer Prize winning category, but not otherwise. And yet Garrow is not a coward, because in his interview that made the news a couple of weeks ago, at least 15 people sent it to me because they knew I'd be interested. But the one where he's really rubbed against the grain is Martin Luther King. And he's the primary biographer, and he's a truth teller. Because what he knows, are you familiar with this at all? Or
with what in particular?
Well, King was...
About him being a rounder
he was in a Harvey Weinstein land.
Yeah, I know all about that.
And they had, and Garrow has the FBI documents because they had him wiretapped and taped, bugged, whatever. And in one occasion, and Garrow talks about this openly, King was there while one of his fellow pastors was raping some woman in the same room, which now we're moving beyond. We're into the room now where they begin to rethink Martin Luther King's holiday almost, I mean, if you're an accomplice to a rape. And as also Garrow pointed out, that King had something like 45 different mistresses, and he'd become increasingly alcoholic over time. Not that
there's anything wrong with it.
All those things, right?
But, I mean, I always was under the impression you had to have at least 50 to get your own holiday.
Well, I don't know if Abraham Lincoln had 50. Thomas Jefferson may have, but...
all I can say is I'm holding out for Wilt Chamberlain Day. That's going to be fun.
That'll be a long day.
That'll be a long weekend.
Right. We'll have to give him 2 months, It's odd because I remember earlier this year I'd posted a picture. I had, when I was in France, I stopped and visited an American cemetery and took some photos.
Yeah. And it was beautiful and tidy and top-notch.
Immaculate. And Memorial Day comes, and it's like the end of May, right? And so I put a picture up on Facebook. I said, how come these guys get a day and other groups get a month?
Right.
And that was like the beginning of Gay Pride Month, right? You think about the imbalance there. Whereas with King, he has his own day. Jefferson and Washington and Lincoln had to be compressed into a day. Right.
Well, I think that was really more. That was a little more evil than we give it credit.
I think you're right. I think it was the beginning of that whole icon shattering stuff.
Yeah. But take the persona, take the person out of this persona, because he was a stand-up guy, and we've got no place for that.
Yeah. Right.
Let's make it abstract.
That's right. Just President's Day. Presidents mean Nixon, Warren G. Harding, Joe Biden. They're all presidents.
That is moral relativism.
Yep, that's it. You're right. That's how they begin. That slow trek down that path. But a few years ago, Garrow wrote up what he knew because he had seen the FBI notes, that were transcripts of the tapes. And so these were, and they were very specific. And he went to the New York Times, all the New York major publishers, and they all turned them down. And they said, well, these aren't the tapes themselves. These are notes on the tapes. And as Garrow explained, he goes, these are FBI agents writing notes for tapes that their supervisors could listen to, right? They're transcribing what's happening on those tapes. You're not going to know anymore when the tapes come out. Tapes are allegedly to come out in 2027. So we'll see what happens. But he got turned down by every single major American publication. He had to publish it in Britain. That's the way it works.
Those American publishing houses are there for a different reason. They're there to pimp what the globalists want and to be a catalyst for payoffs for people behaving the way that the globalists want them to behave and writing the things they want them to write.
Right, and now it's getting more and more blatant. It's in your face blatant now. They don't even disguise their motives now, you know? So, yeah, but we have new icons coming on. I don't have to replace Martin Luther King. We have guys like Jay-Z and, I don't know, who else is coming up? Benjamin Crump. Crump. You went from the heroes of resistance to the opportunists of grifting. It's just a long, slow slide. But Obama's, they've let him get away. They let him define himself, and no one knows who he is or what he is, right? He's like Austin Powers, international man of mystery.
I'm curious about the people. There's so many people there who, personally, the whole Obama thing, I got it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what he was.
Right.
I could tell by looking at him.
Yeah.
I listened to him.
Watching him throw baseballs.
I knew exactly what this guy was.
Right.
What the hell? How's everybody missing this for a decade?
Well, they refused to ask questions. And what's refreshing about this conversation...
We knew stuff about him that would have gotten him in prison, let alone not elected before the election. But go ahead.
A great case of that is the early years of his existence, right?
Yeah.
In 2008, for instance, this a fellow I know, actually, his name's Michael Patrick Leahy. He wrote an unpublished book. I forget the name of it. But he had one chapter dedicated to the first year or two of his life. And what he said was that Obama's mother left Hawaii for the mainland when Obama would have been like 3 or 4 weeks old. She came to Seattle, and she enrolled at the University of Washington, and she lived there for that whole next year without any male accompaniment. In other words, the Barack Obama, the Kenyan, was still back in Hawaii, right? He writes this in an unpublished memoir in 2008, and it's not until 2017 when Rising Star comes out and David Garrow gives the official imprimatur to what Leahy was saying in 2008. In the interim, they fell all over themselves, even his biographers, even his Pulitzer Prize-winning biographers, to confirm the story that Obama told at the 2004 convention. This incredible romance between this girl from Kansas, well, she's from Seattle, and this goat herder, right, from Kenya. They meet and they fall in love. And out of this spectacular multicultural union comes me. And then when I was 2 years old, he told us over and over again, my father got a call to Harvard, and it was too good a deal to resist. And then our parents went their separate ways, but they continued to love each other. Total nonsense, right?
Complete.
Total fraud. I'm of the opinion, and Garrow is, I think, heading in that direction, that Barack Obama's, the Kenyan, had nothing to do with the birth of the son, right? Mm-hmm. Of Barack Obama, the Barack Obama we know. Because here's what happens, and they don't ask questions. All the main biographers say, well, in the summer of 1960, this is the Willie Loman of this story, the death of the salesman guy. The grandfather, Stanley Dunham, says, honey, I think there's really good opportunities for us in Hawaii where I can get a job as an assistant manager at a furniture store. This is the summer of 1960. And so his wife, who's the breadwinner in the family, works at a bank, right? She's the aunt to his grasshopper, says, sure, honey, let's move the whole family to Hawaii, including little Ann Dunham, who doesn't want to go, right? And they end up in Hawaii, 1960. And then, sure enough, Ann meets someone, gets pregnant, and sometime later has a baby, right? What happens in 1960 when you get pregnant? Especially if you get knocked up by a black guy back in Seattle, right? You leave town, right? And in that time, for a multiracial baby, Hawaii is about the only place you're going to go where you're going to have a half a chance to be treated decently. Just that's the reality of life circa 1960. Even if it was a white baby, you left town. The girls left town. They went to visit some aunt in Wisconsin or something, came back, had the baby, and everyone made believe that, no, they gave the baby away. They gave it up for adoption. Mm-hmm. Everyone made believe that she was actually visiting an aunt in Wisconsin, gave her a fresh start. But so the media could have gotten that story right even before 2008.
Yes.
From the moment he started telling it.
Which is the thing that has got to be, the guilt has got to be getting some of those people who obfuscated or misdirected or who just didn't report things that they knew. Some of those people have to be getting racked with some guilt right now.
Do you ever imagine what the dynamics like in, say, a New York Times newsroom today? How do they, they look at each other and say, what are we going to talk about today?
It's got to be awful.
It's like, what are we going to suppress today? What story are we going to not report today, right?
How about the Star?
Oh, my gosh.
Joyce is gone now.
Joyce
Smith.
And was she halfway reasonable? Or
She was the one who wrote, her column was one of the remaining columns that was locally produced that was highly read. She wrote about restaurant closings.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And health reviews and new restaurants and things like that and other businesses. It was called Cityscape, and it was in there forever.
Yeah.
But now that's gone. Really, it's just whittled down to nothing.
Well, they did have enough staff hour to write an article about a guy that I followed this, and his name is Angelo Pacheco, right? He's in 2020, he's interviewed by KCUR, which is the NPR station in Kansas City, about why young people should get involved in politics. And he's at that time a freshman. He's at UMKC, and an aspiring, political science kind of guy. He believes in the Second Amendment, which is rare. You expect at UMKC. He has an Hispanic name. He's about 5 foot. Looking at it, he can't be more than 5'4", 120 pounds. He's jockey size. A cute kid, otherwise, nice looking kid. And then he finally becomes a star in Kansas City. Here's what happens. He goes to Washington on a certain day in January in 2021. Mm-hmm. We can't talk about the specifics of the day. Mm-hmm. You get in trouble. And he goes, and I read the FBI indictment, and it's tragicomic, and it seems to be written by an elf, just from the language. I just deduced it was by a female because of just the tone and stuff. Because I'm going to call her she, was so excited about this case 2.5 years after the fact, right? And then she's being very fair and describes what Angelo did inside this building, this big building in Washington. She says he walks in, the door is open, he looks around, 6 seconds later, he walks out, right? 6 seconds. And he's my famous 6-second insurrectionist. Walks out 6 seconds later. They track him down for 2.5 years and just arrested him, right? Star runs this big article, big hit piece on poor Angelo Pacheco, life ruined, 4 counts against him, disorderly, all in 6 seconds. He could have done all this. Parading? He had 6 seconds to parade. How could you parade in 6 seconds? Disorderly conduct. You can see him on the video. He's just walking in, walking out. And
that may be a record.
For the
number of serious crimes committed in 6 seconds.
Right.
It's like, how do you top that?
That's exactly right. It's like, how many 3-pointers can you hit in 28 seconds or something? I mean, it's like
Wow.
four accounts in 6 seconds. And what's, like I say, his size matters here because he's not the kind of guy capable of breaking down barricades or doing things like that. But the Star mustered up enough resources to report on this and with some vigor. In fact, I think assigned to it was Judy Thomas, who's their all-purpose hit person. She's been around for a long time, looking for radical right-wingers and wherever.
Did they want to put him in prison for life or what? What did the Star want?
I don't know how far along that'll go, but they also described how they got him, right? And they described this like it was a good thing. Apparently, there's these online trolls who have nothing better to do than to review footage. And I don't know, they may be getting slipped the footage by the FBI or whoever, like freelance narcs.
Mm.
And they explained it in breathless kind of detail, how they saw his image, they tracked him through other social media sites, blah, 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 blah. Like KCUR's Faces in the Crowd, right? Track him down, and there he is, being nailed in Kansas City. His parents probably just totally crestfallen, just a little kid. And now a prisoner of the state. I don't know what his fate will be, and nor could I. It's hard there's so many people being treated so badly, it's hard to gain.
The Star wanted them to fire up old Sparky for him.
Yeah, probably, right.
Wanted to give him the chair.
Right. And proof that not all Hispanics are our friends,
Right.
Yeah, you would think that would have given him a little grace, but it did not. Whereas, just by comparison, just the Barack Obama could have, committed murder. He could have murdered that poor personal chef and they wouldn't care. They wouldn't want to know. They're not going to know. They can put their hands over their ears, I remember this occurred when I was writing about Obama and Who Wrote Dreams from My Father. I was getting the major media would not even touch us, wouldn't look at it, didn't want to know.
Yeah.
I said, all you have to do is just look at my evidence. It's in these books. You don't even have to leave your desk, and you're going to come to the same conclusion I did. But instead, when Sarah Palin's memoir, autobiography comes out, called Going Rogue, which is actually a fun read, like in 2009, the Associated Press alone sicked 11 fact checkers on the book, right? And that's why I asked you that question about what they do in the newsroom. How do they look at each other? What do they say? Hey, I just discovered that going through Sarah Palin's dumpster that she ran up a debt on her credit card bill last month. It could come down to that. Whereas with the Clintons or the Obamas, bodies falling by the wayside, and no one wants to know. Poor Donald Young. We mentioned his name on here.
Yeah, I don't know why. Back to why is this coming out now?
Yeah, why? I don't get it.
This goes back to our what's the angle?
Mm-hmm.
So this is just like, so here comes this guy.
Right.
It's already been out there, so it's not new.
Right.
But it's newly regurgitated.
Right.
And it's not something that ever had traction because it was first released when it was just not okay to even mention anything about Obama that was negative.
Right.
So it was all kind of quiet. We let it out, but we did it very quietly so that we were inoculated before the inauguration, before the election. Okay, now all that is over. Is it time for a re-inoculation of the Obamas for the same reason?
Well, or another possibility is Garrow openly says this. The phrase he uses to describe Obama's presidency, especially on the issue of race, was total failure. In the epilogue to his 2017 book, he goes through a litany of reasons why Obama failed as a president.
Mm-hmm.
With the possibility of a Michelle Obama candidacy looming,
mm-hmm.
This may be Garrow's way of putting a knot in that plan. Putting a crimp in that a cent. But then the question is, who would be putting him up to it? Who would
yeah,
be?
and
Who would
why
his
would he
candidate
want
be?
to put a crimp in that?
Yeah, and because he's Obama's afraid of him, and Garrow says this openly. He's afraid of what Garrow knows, and he was really apprehensive when he learned that Garrow had gotten a hold of the letters. And when Garrow describes Obama, he describes him not as a normal human being.
He's a narcissist.
And he says, Trump is a normal human being. He's excessive and bombastic, but he's a real human being.
Yeah.
Obama's not.
Obama's missing a chip.
So why are they doing that now? And this is where your expertise, I think, will be called on in future months to deduce the way ahead,
You're right, though. We've got to figure that one out. There's something going on there.
And when we find out, it's just like they took out Andrew Cuomo. Mm-hmm. That was an orchestrated hit. I mean, that was, it was like St. Valentine's Massacre. It was that well planned and executed. And I know who planned that and who orchestrated it. And that was the Clintons. Now, who's going after Michelle and the Obamas?
The Clintons, I guess.
I wouldn't put it past them,
Yeah, I was wondering about that. There's another, what's the other third power group? Oh, the Bidens.
Nah.
The Bidens could wind up being a giant tar baby for all these people.
Could be.
Could be hilarious.
Hope so.
They'd be like, oh, you got some Joe on you. Oh, you got Hunter on you. Oh,
that's when the news logjam breaks. That could happen. But in the meantime, it could be that the Clintons are jealous that the Obamas are accumulating a body count that could rival their own,
That's right.
So, and they're probably jealous that the Obamas had a personal chef and they didn't, right? And the Obamas got more money than they do now, which is kind of cool. So if you're an Obama. But anyhow, by the way, speaking of money and affluence, here we are in suburban Kansas City.
A lot of money gets made here at Real Media.
Yeah, right. And but on a value basis, it's all well earned and deserved. This is Real Media, where we're broadcasting from.
That's what I mean. This is where people make money.
That's right. They make money for you.
That's right.
Because when I was making documentaries, just a quick aside, I did one for the Steamboat Arabia, which is still showing. That was some years ago. And they asked me when I came in, I just thought of this on the moment, but in retrospect, it seemed kind of brilliant as a marketer. They said, it's like giving out teeth. It's like going back to the Ipana commercial. But they said, how much will this cost? I said, that's the wrong question. Yeah. And they said, what's the right question? I said, how much will it make? Right? So 100,000 videos they've sold later at $15 a pop, plus all of the, in-store, and they show it as for 30 years now. They've been showing it on the screen. It's paid for itself, right? And that's what I think a good video production company does is they make you money. They don't cost
Absolutely.
you money. And I think Real Media is like at the top of the game for that. So, hey, we'll be back next week with some more action and adventure. Upstream.
With Cashel and Edge.